Easy Sports Talk Show with Ed Smith and Javon Adams. My name is Javon Adams. You can call me Jay or J Love. We do this thing 3 times a week. He is not only a former professional baseball player, but he also played in the National Football League for that first Super Bowl bound team for the Atlanta Falcons. He's an author. He's a motivational speaker. Ed Smith, what is good, my brother?
Hey, I mean, sometimes you have to laugh to keep from crying, right, bro? We have some
Tell me
conversations
about it,
away
man.
from doing these shows, and you just,
Tell me about
hey,
it.
I wanted to bring something up too. And we didn't even bring this up before we got on.
Yeah.
Today is 9/11,
Yes.
the anniversary of, the planes hitting the towers, and just want to, give a moment to remember the sacrifice that a lot of families and people made on this day 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Very sad memoriam. And, we all, this is one of those days where when it happened, we all remember where we were, what we were doing,
Yeah.
how it affected us. And, it's really, it's one of those times in history, like when they dropped the bomb on us, Hiroshima, when
Yeah.
Kennedy was shot. You run a few of these, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, a few of these days in history that you
Yeah.
and I, and this was even more perfect because this isn't one that people are telling us from the history books. We were grown men when this happened back in 2001.
Yeah.
And it's really a sad day in our history, and it'll never be forgotten. But we always have to remember so many lives were lost, and for what, so, and we
Yeah.
rebounded. So here we are 23 years later, still doing it.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because, again, when you think of the firefighters and the policemen that ran into those buildings and
Ran
just,
to it.
I mean, the people were running away from the carnage, and they were running to it to be of service and try to help people. You mentioned remembering where you were. Our oldest is he'll be 23 in November, but Nika was pregnant with Kendrick at that time, and she works in healthcare, so she was working, and she was I was just getting up to get ready to go to work, and so she was on overnights, and she was still there. She calls me and says, "Turn on the television. Did you see?" And I said, "See what?" So I turn on television, and I see the second plane had already hit, and so all you see is the smoke kind of billowing out, and just all the chaos. And she was concerned because her paternal grandfather, was a taxi driver, and so being down there around the Twin Towers, that was part of
Yeah.
the route that he would take, and so uh, weren't able to reach him for a few hours. So there was some tense moments there, and then one of my good friends lived in there. His apartment was around that area. Thankfully, he was okay, but yeah, so it was scary, and I was working for the Arizona Republic at the time, and because media companies were thought to be maybe they were going to be targeted quite possibly, so they sent us home right around midday because being a tall building, being a
Yeah.
media company. But yeah, what about yourself? I know that you had an interesting where you were, what was going on around
Well,
that time,
yeah,
right?
my grandmother, my dad's mom, had just passed on that Sunday. So I was supposed to be in the city that week. I was getting ready to take my Series 6 test for financial planning. And I was supposed to be up in the city that week. But what happened when my grandmother passed, I pushed it to the following week because we were going to have her services I think it was that Friday. Obviously, not knowing we were going to hit on Tuesday. So when the planes hit, I was in my office doing some last minute studying for, going up next week to pay respects to my grandmother and then take my tests and everything like that. And all of a sudden we got hit. And what happened for me, I'm sitting there and, just in shock and awe and everything. And then I remember, having, because everything was grounded, I remember having to figure out how to get up to New Jersey for my grandmother's services.
Yeah.
And so I ended up taking a bus. Eventually, I took a bus out of Atlanta up to Washington. You know how long that is, all those stops and stuff like that. Got
Yeah.
on a train in Washington and eventually got up to New Jersey for my grandmother's services on that Friday. My brother, who was at the time living out here, we were both just kind of finished our careers to a certain degree. He was out here in Arizona. He couldn't make the services. He couldn't figure out a way to get
Right.
from there to here, so he missed my grandmother's funeral. And then for me, what happened, because everything obviously changed as far as schedule and stuff like that, I ended up changing my plans after my grandmother's funeral. I was one of the very first people to get on a plane out of Newark, New Jersey, to fly back to Atlanta. And I remember, I mean, they told everybody be at the airports 4 hours before, because you remember before this, you could literally just walk right to the gate with somebody, or nothing checked or anything. I just walk right to the gate, get on the plane, hug, kiss, and everything. They could almost walk on the plane with you. Now that was the beginning of TSA. So they told everybody be there 4 hours. So I got there 4+ hours ahead, and the airport was empty. There was nobody there. I was literally through TSA and all that because there was nobody there, like in 10 minutes. So I waited all that time to finally get on the plane. And that was the most intense and nerve-wracking flight, taking off out of Newark. And when we went up, bro, and we banked, you could see the smoldering from the 2 Twin Towers. It was, we went up and you could look and see it, right? So we eventually, hour and a half flight, 2-hour flight down to Atlanta. Nobody moved. And I remember thinking, if somebody gets up out of their seat on this plane, I don't care, man, woman, or child, I'm swinging first, asking questions later. Yeah. And we ended up getting down to Atlanta. We touched ground, and it was so intense. When we finally touched the ground, everybody just started clapping. And it was just like, because it was nerve. Everybody was nervous. But that was my experience with 9/11, and, like I said, I had people that were calling me that day when it happened, because I had a lot of friends who worked in downtown Atlanta, and nobody knew where this was all coming from. They told everybody, get out of these buildings, go home, no matter where they were. And, one of my best friends in the world, he called me. He's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm getting the hell out of here. And, because he worked in one of the big government buildings downtown Atlanta. But, it was a scary time, man, very scary. Never seen everything shut down like that other than COVID. We obviously went through the COVID stuff, but this was not a plane in the air for days. And it was the whole country just kind of shut down, just like with COVID, but it was a different circumstance for it. And it was just weird, man.
It definitely was. So yes, so definitely, what is it? We'll always remember. So 9/11. So Easy Sports Talk Show. He's Ed Smith. I'm Javon Adams. Now, there was, of course, baseball. When baseball came back, it served as kind of that good diversion, great diversion there. And also when National Football League came back, it did a lot of the same things. So with the National Football League, we're in week 2, the preparations for week 2. You have said that the first 4 weeks, because of the lack of zealousness with or intensity for those 3 preseason games, that the first 4 games of the regular season are almost like the preseason. So if week 1 was okay, if trying to shake out some of the cobwebs, what do you expect to see for week 2? And is there a matchup or 2 that's on your radar for week 2?
Yeah, what you'll see is over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks leading through September is you'll see the defenses ahead of the offenses for the most part. Defense, they're hunters. All they got to do, you don't have to worry about scheming a lot of times. You got dogs on that side, you can just say, go get them. They can disrupt running game, passing game. They go get at it. You got a good secondary. They all know how to cover. Offense is more of a orchestra. It's like a ballet. You got the offensive linemen who all have to be in step with each other. You got the quarterback who has to be in step with his wide receivers, the timing wise. Running backs got to get that feel for where the holes are. And some teams are a little ahead because they actually played, some of the players during the preseason. And then some are just, they just, like we saw San Francisco the other day, they just put it together. They look like they're a midseason form. But for most teams, what you'll see over the next few weeks is the offenses will start to catch up a little bit in terms, because we had, not a lot of explosion this first week. It was, we had teams that didn't even score a touchdown, 6 field goals and stuff like that. And what you'll see is more cohesiveness on the other side of the ball, and less penalties and more familiarity with what they're calling, like that legal procedure with the guards and tackles being off the ball, too much. They'll start getting that right less penalties in terms of holding and stuff like that. So what I'm looking for over the next few weeks is the offense kind of coming into shape and form, and the game becoming a little less hectic because it was or smoother, if you want to call it that, on both sides. As far as matchups this week, I do like that Miami Bills game to kick off Thursday night.
Depending on how Josh Allen's hand is, right?
Yeah, I mean he's going to play.
Yeah,
and I think it was left hand, right? I don't think it was his right hand.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I have to look at
so
that.
as long as it's not the throwing hand, he'll work through that. They might even give him a little something to make him feel better. Do something to make me feel better. So they might give him a little side or something. But I expect he'll be out there, and I think that's one of my matchups of the week. I'm also interested to see, because I think Chicago goes down to Houston, so we'll get Wonder Boy .1 versus Wonder Boy .2, meaning Caleb Williams go down and see how it's really done in Houston, because he didn't perform well in week 1, but even though Chicago got the win. It'll be interesting to see how he does on the road down there.
Yeah, because they didn't. What is it? I believe Chicago didn't score an offensive touchdown.
Yeah, they got away with it. I mean, special teams and defense, pick sixes and stuff like that. So I think he had 90 some odd yards passing in that game. So we saw it wasn't as easy as he thinks it might be. So we'll see whether he can rebound. And that's gonna be a tough environment down there in Houston with D'Amico and them boys ready to get after him. So first couple weeks or so in the league might not be as easy as we thought it would be. And there's some other matchups.
And with the early returns are still good for C.J. Stroud. I mean,
he looked good.
Continuing to sing his praises.
Well, what you look for in C.J., because there's always that sophomore slump out there, but for me, I'm looking at how comfortable he looks and how he's orchestrating and moving and operating that off within that offense. And, he's only going to get better in terms of going from his reads and progression and stuff like that. And they always talk about the game starts to slow down for you. He might be one of those dudes, and because usually it's around year 3. Even Mahomes said first couple of years, he didn't even know how to read all defenses and stuff like that. CJ looks like he might be ahead of the curve in terms of reading defenses, being comfortable. Here's the key: when quarterbacks start to manipulate the defense, that's when they see it. And I'm talking about that's Brady-ish, that's Peyton Manning-ish, where they make the defense do what they want them to do to put them, in the best situation, and that's with your eyes. That's with your inflection at the line of scrimmage, changing plays subtly, the hand movements and signals and stuff like that. You start to see that. That's when you're at that next level. And also like with Tom Brady, he got to a point where there was nothing you could show him or do to him that was going to fluster him. And now with some of these younger quarterbacks, there's still the right defensive coordinator can still get after them, can confuse them a little bit. And that's just naturally right because they still have not seen everything. Mahomes is getting to the point where I don't know if there's anything you could do to confuse him now. And he's a manipulator and a distributor and everything you want to call it. So he's at that level where a lot of these young quarterbacks want to get to, and it'll be interesting to see the trajectory of C.J. Stroud. We're going to watch him in this game against Chicago, see what he's starting to do, and then some of the other younger quarterbacks, they should be striding to get to where, somewhere near the room he's in, and then they all want to reach for where Mahomes is, but we know everybody can't beat him. But that's what I'll be looking for is like some of these young quarterbacks, are they making those next steps? And then the ones that are fresh in, how brutal is the game on them to begin with, because it's not easy out there on these young quarterbacks, man.
Speaking of, they're still young quarterbacks. I want to just throw out there before I move on, Herbert and Lawrence, because I know are you still a Herbert fan, a Herbert believer, or has it changed a bit? And Trevor Lawrence just, I mean, he's not all that, right?
Herbert is interesting because he now has a coach in Jim Harbaugh, that is going to take more away from him than
Yeah.
give him. Herbert is going to be one of those quarterbacks now. When you look at the box scores, man, he threw the ball 25 times. That's cute. 30 times. That's going to be like the max for him this season because Jimbo Harbaugh, his thing is run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. We actually saw what he did in college last year where his quarterback did not throw a pass in the entire second half of a game, and they still won. So we're going to see a lot of that, a lot less from Herbert now. Does that mean as far as his skills, he might have them and might be developing? I don't know if we're going to get a chance to really see them, though. He's in a different situation than some quarterbacks. And as far as your boy Lawrence, I'm still waiting to see what everybody else, include the experts and people that gave him all this money, what they've seen in him, because he came out like can't miss. This dude could have came out after his freshman year, and and to this point, and I will say his growth was stunted a little bit with that, with the Urban Meyer being there and stuff like that. But still, I have not seen that. What everybody else keeps telling us we're supposed to see. And maybe I'm not gonna say he's topped out already, but maybe that the ceiling that they put on him is a little lower. Like his building doesn't go up to the 90th floor. His office might be on the 70th or 65th. We don't know.
Right.
And maybe we'll just, after a few years, we'll realize that. So, but he's still a work in progress and an incomplete grade because of some of the things he's gone through. But yeah, I will say this much: you got to start showing us more than just telling us. So I'm still waiting to see what he's going to develop to be, but it hadn't looked like elite to this point.
Easy Sports Talk Show. Ed Smith, Javon Adams. We do this thing 3 times a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Make sure you tell a friend that what we got going on. And when you're talking about football, especially around this time of year, especially going through until you get through February, it's going to be a lot of money that's put on the line. So whether it's college or pros, and this is one of those things. In the college ranks, I think this is going to be more of a new phenomenon, or phenomenon is probably too strong of a word, but a new occurrence. Whereas in the pro ranks, they probably get this a lot more. And what I'm talking about is sports betting. There was a story that was up on ESPN where a college quarterback, Auburn's Peyton Thorne, was talking about how through his Venmo account, bettors are reaching out to him to have him reimburse them for their losses. And this is kind of one of those unintended consequences when with the NIL, with being able to compensate players. Universities aren't compensating players, but we know about the collectives, so forth and so on. But with it being much more out in the open, these people who are betting on these games, they want a return. They want to win. They want, especially when they're doing these parlays or doing all this other stuff when it comes to the games. And while in the story they mentioned there's a golfer and then there are pro athletes that have talked about fans reaching out to, or bettors. So I don't know if we can necessarily call them fans, but bettors reaching out to them via their social media or their those types of apps to request payment for their losses. So it's a little bit scary because it's great when you have technology that makes the world smaller, but then also it allows a little bit of stalking that goes on, and then people start to get these unrealistic expectations about well, you owe me because I lost my money betting on the game that you played in.
It's a slippery slope, man. And what I would hope is these athletes are not, I guess, entangling themselves in this. Me personally, if someone got my Venmo information and sending me requests, man, I had to change my Venmo name or username and all that stuff because I couldn't have those type of people reaching out to me because what's going to eventually happen. Somebody's going to lose big money on something that you did or were supposed to do or didn't do. And, when you start getting the wrong type of people, some of them people with O's and A's at the end of their name, get the wrong type of people chasing you down, that's when it gets scary. I couldn't imagine, being an athlete now and then someone, hey, I think you owe me on that one because you were supposed to, man, that'd be scary. All of a sudden people reaching out to you. And like I said, I hope that the athletes aren't getting too close to this, because I think one of the things one university actually had where they were going to put barcodes or a scan code.
Oh, on the helmets or something like that? Yeah, to donate to the collective.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Now,
they vetoed it, but just thinking along those lines is a little
yeah, just
wild.
the thought of something like that. Because, like I said, you giveth and it can be taketh away too.
Mhm.
I'm people donating and now they're not getting a return on their investment. And now I want that money back. And I would not go down that road. And some of these NIL deals, I think they should actually be a little above board, above the surface, so we know exactly what's going on. I hope they're getting a better grip on all that stuff, because betting is here to stay, and it could get real ugly. Like I said, I wouldn't want people chasing me down on PayPal and Venmo and stuff like that.
This is true. And what's also what's interesting, because it's not uncommon for example, if what is it? I'm trying to think of when George Mason, for example, when they went deep into the NCAA's a handful of years ago in men's tournament, and then they had an increase in applications for people wanting to attend the school. Those types of things definitely happen. That increased visibility. You're winning. You're the new hot thing, for lack of a better term, and so you'll reap the benefits for that. For example, I imagine, I believe it was even written about that when Deion Sanders came to Colorado, that they had an uptick in applications, and so merchandise ends up selling. So all those things. So it's the good and the bad that come with it. You have to hopefully what colleges are doing now, and it's scary that it has to be this way, is not only teaching them how to talk to the media, because I'm sure that depending on the college that you're attending, the university you're attending, they try to school you in that way and what to say and what not to say, but also in how to really try to navigate staying away from any type of signs of impropriety when it comes to betting or being around bettors and that type of stuff. You got to walk that fine line, and especially when you're making money and then somebody knows that you just signed that NIL deal. There's some people that'll meet you in a club and want to get freaky with you, and next thing you know, for whatever it is, and they try to take you for your money or whatever it might be.
One of the things, Jay, that I think we have to keep an eye on is we hear about all these NIL deals, right? But what about the stuff that's still going on in the back rooms? Meaning, because I'm sure,
that there are a lot of folks that say, I don't need to be here. Come over here. Let me give you this money.
Exactly.
Right here. Just know this is what I want.
Yeah, I can take care of you, instead of going through all that where you got to, taxes and this and another thing. Let's just, I want to take care of you. So here's some money. It's not legal. It's not illegal anymore because I can give it to you. Let's just not tell anybody. Let's go ahead. And so there's a lot of backroom deals, I imagine, that are going on that could eventually, and part of it is because this is not governed. There's no, they don't have any rules and regulations for the most part. And say, they just told the athletes, go out and get your deals and sign them, and we'll figure it all out later. But what is, some of this stuff is not going on, in like, hey, let's have a press conference and sign this deal together. No. And I guarantee you, some of it, man, is just. You see me, Jay?
Yeah, I see you.
Oh, there we go. Went away for a second. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's there are some deals that are going on that we don't know about, for real.
And it's funny because when you mentioned that is when I thought about. I had never thought about it until you mentioned it. There's stuff can be out in the light, but there's still those folks that want to be under the radar and just say, well, here's the $2,000. Just I gave it to you. Just here you go. You can go ahead and do your thing. But yeah, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah,
it's cool. So he is Ed Smith, and I am Javon Adams. We do this thing 3 times a week. You can go to ezsportstalk.com, ezsportstalk.com. Also, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Easy Sports Talk Show, at The Easy Sports Talk Show. And however you came across this, let somebody know, tell a friend about what we have going on. Make sure you subscribe to wherever you listen to this, so that way you can get notified as well. And as we always like to say around this time, you can